Hello, YouTube. Yeah, this is Dave, formerly K9RUF, now K9AT. And after 40 some years, I've finally decided to go get my extra, sitting at advance for far too long. And to celebrate, I thought I'd get a call sign that it would be a 1x2. And this call sign has an interesting history, and I won't share it here, but it's kind of a cool call sign. I'm glad I got it. Anyway, so as I look across the YouTube landscape, and I've been checking into my channel, I'm getting a lot of subscribers. So that kind of tells me you guys are looking and itching for some more content. Only got 3 videos out there now, so I thought, well, I'd dig into the archives and come up with another presentation that I could share with you for the time being here. And so back in 2011, I put up a tower at my house, and it was kind of one of those things on my bucket list after I watched my mom go through cancer, and she didn't win the battle, but decided that there's no time like the present because life isn't a dress rehearsal. You got to live in the moment, and so I had the funds, and I thought, well, let's do that bucket list item, which is the tower, and I'm glad I did it. I've had it since, like I say, 2011 when I put it up, and it's been great. So I thought I'd put in the content that has been out on my QRZ page into a video so that you guys could enjoy it and maybe get some little backstories on how it all came together when I put this tower up. So first off, let me get the old presentation rolling here. I want to kind of give you a little introduction. This is not your, monster tower install like you see on the pages of QRZ. But then again, it's not a small rooftop tripod installation. It's, your average tower installation. But it's not small, but it's not gigantic. So it's something I think, is kind of feasible, I guess, for your ham that's willing to break open the piggy bank. So part of this, I'm going to take you on a little guided tour, showing how the tower came together, share with you a spreadsheet with the installation of all the costs to see if you got the stomach for what something like this costs. And then I'm going to have some remarks about the tower first here. So first thing, just as a disclaimer, you might not agree with the tower I chose, and I understand that. I get that people are going to probably shoot holes through what I did, and they say, well, that's wrong, that's bad, he should have done this, blah blah blah. And towers I found are kind of like Chevys and Fords and Dodges. You have your favorite vehicle, and you think that's the best. And so I'm going to stick with the one I chose. I'm going to tell you why, and maybe this will resonate with you, and maybe it'll make some sense. You'll go, yeah, you know what? He's not full of stuff, and it actually makes sense what he said. So, anyways, first and most important thing you got to think about when you're doing a tower is, can you fit a tower on your lot, and can you put one up if you've got HOAs and covenants and restrictions and stuff like that. If you can't, then I guess you can probably turn off this video. You're screwed. And I got to ask you why you bought that house in the first place. Of course, your wife wanted those really nice walk-in closets in a nice neighborhood with the health club and everything. Okay, well, you got all that. Now it's going to be tough for you to put a tower up. So I'll let you deal with that. But, if you do live in a place like that with restrictions, you're not dead in the water. You've got options. There's even people that make flagpole antennas, which, make great verticals, and nobody will know the better. And it's, something that can get you by. Fortunately, I knew what I was heading into, and that's when I chose the house we bought and live in. It's a existing construction. It's in unincorporated Lake County in Illinois, and I like to say we have a little bit of hillbilly, not a lot, but some neighborhoods are just so doggone restrictive. You can't have basketball hoops up, you can't keep a camper in your driveway, you got to hide your children. No kidding. But on the flip side, I can appreciate not having, I hope I don't offend anybody, but dome homes and A-frames and, cars on blocks and your, front yard with weeds growing around. That kind of stuff they kind of frown on. So I say we have just a little bit of hillbilly, and that's good enough for me to be able to put up the tower, and I was appreciative of that. So as I was going through this, I kind of said, I got to figure out a way to do this and kind of have some criteria for selecting the tower. And so the first thing that I wanted to consider for this was the ease of climbing and comfortableness of being on the tower. If you look at towers, a lot of them you just look at them and go, it's a tower. But if you take a closer look at them, a lot of them have like X braces. And if you're the guy that's climbing the tower, which I was, so I said, this has got to be comfortable. I want to make sure that my feet aren't going to be like jammed next to each other at an uncomfortable angle. So I wanted flat rungs and something that was easy to climb. And because you know what? There's been times when I've actually been up there for like 5-6 hours at a time, taking apart a rotor, taking a whole bunch of antennas off to get to the top antenna. And fortunately, my ground crew didn't ditch me; they stuck around with me. So that was an important thing. So I want to, and the other thing too is I want to make sure that it was wide enough to to feel safe at the top. Ironically, towers. And I get this from a manufacturer standpoint. They come nested, with the smaller section going to the bigger section, to the bigger section, and then finally you get the base section. So literally the tower company can ship you a 10-foot piece. And that's all well and good, but by the time you get to the top, if it's like 50 feet, and you're hanging on to maybe, I don't know, 14 or 18-inch wide tower that, can get kind of wiggly, that just didn't sit well with me. So I said, I want to have a lot of tower to love and hug and hold on to since I'm going to be up at the top. And the other thing is I wanted it to be lightweight yet strong enough so that, if I go up there, it's not going to move around. And, I didn't want anything heavy like a Rowan 65G, great tower, super expensive. But you can't exactly lug those things around by yourself or you need a whole lot of people. So I wanted it to be strong enough and lightweight enough to hold all the antennas I wanted to put on the tower. And also, wanted to be strong enough so that it wouldn't blow down. Wait, blow down. Did I say blow down? Yeah, I did. When I was a kid, I put up a Rowan Spalding, or I think they call it an HDBX tower. And long story short, that thing blew down in a windstorm. And of all the ways it could have fallen, it fell the best way. I mean, you can read my story on the KORUF page. So I, having that as a nightmare story in my past, I didn't really want to repeat that. So what I learned from that is, getting a nice, big, strong tower, and be able to move forward and have a good experience. So, by the way, this tower presentation is probably going to take a little while, so you might want to grab that bucket of popcorn, and I hope you enjoy it here. So, let's see. The other criteria I really wanted was I wanted it to be aesthetically pleasing. Now, what does that mean? A lot of towers, they go up nice, when they're, galvanized, but then they kind of get gray and they look like an old battleship and ugly. And my wife was kind of, really down on that. She says, "Is this thing going to get ugly looking when it gets old?" And I said, "Well, no, because it's aluminum. It's going to stay the same way it looks when I install it." And that is the case. So here we are in 2019, 8 years later, and it still looks the same way I installed it, which is nice. So that was an important thing. So you're wondering, what kind of tower did he get anyway? The other thing is, I know this sounds stupid, but I talked my wife into, hey, you know what? If I hook a clothesline hook on this, we got something to, attach your clothesline to, with one of those retractable clotheslines. That sealed the deal. So, you can pull that one out. Just give me credit. But anyways, so I had to really decide, what kind of tower did I want to go with? There's different styles of tower. There's a guide tower. And I really didn't want that. And the reason why is, I have a friend, Eric, KC9COK, and he says, height is might. And he did have a beautiful tower. It was 120 some feet, but it had guy wires, and, you need a lot of land for that. And, I just was kind of worried about, someone walking into it. And you have to be kind of out in the middle of nowhere and have a lot of land to do that. And I really didn't have that. And it kind of would end up making it look like a radio station. I just want to look like a ham operator. And and for guide, you can go as high as you want, as long as you got a good guy set. But for me, that just wasn't a real good option. So the other kind of tower I was thinking about was the crank up. Well, that didn't really settle too well with me because they really are a lot of maintenance. You have to make sure the cables stay greased and all that kind of stuff, and then you also have to have a way for the cables so they stay nested with hooks, so that when the tower goes up and down, the cables don't get pinched. Um, and you also have to buy an expensive winch to lower it down. And even when it's lowered down, you're still, I've seen guys having to climb with, an extension ladder to 20 feet. And so if you're not climbing a tower, you're climbing a ladder. So I don't know. It just didn't seem to make too much sense. Although, who's that? Heights makes a tower, which is really pretty cool. I would consider that if I was going to go with a crank up, because that'll actually lay the tower all the way down to the ground, and then you can work on it and then crank it back up. So anyway, the winning ticket for me was that's right, the freestanding tower. And now with the freestanding tower, the the idea that I really liked about it was it's a reasonable cost. You've got low maintenance. You really you just got to put it up and go for it. There's the cables can be nicely tied onto the tower legs, and everything just mount. Oh, and then you can also mount things at the full length of the tower. So if you want to put a weather station, an IP camera, things like that, you can't do that with a crank-up tower because it would just literally rip those things off as it collapses. Now the downside is, of course, if it's windy out, you got to make sure that what you have up there is going to stay up there. Say some prayers, light some candles at the cathedral if the winds kick up. But for most time, if you plan your square footage right, you can maybe get by and not have a problem there. So now the next choice was, do I want to buy new or used? And honestly, I'll just throw this out there. I think the most expensive tower is a used tower because you've got all sorts of unknowns. You could buy a tower that looks good, but it might have corrosion on the inside that you won't know about, which weakens the tower, and it could end up coming down. And you don't know, what type of base to get. The tower might be out of business, and if you get the wrong base with the wrong metallurgy, wrong length of the depth for the holes, you don't know what kind of rebar is needed, unless you got the actual engineering drawings and stuff like that. So there's just a lot of things that kind of make it an unknown. And the other thing is, suppose the bolts are missing. Now you got to find the right bolts from the hardware store. And what if you get the wrong bolt? So maybe you got a shear bolt instead of a regular bolt. You got to pay attention to all these things. So if you buy a new tower, you know that the tower is going to stand up and provide many, many good years of service. Towers, are designed by structural engineers, so they know what they're doing, and you're just paying for their expertise. Plus, when you buy a new tower, you got the support of the company behind you, in case any parts are missing, and you got construction advice. So for me, it wasn't worth the gamble, I thought, to buy a used tower to save a few bucks. I'd rather be safe than sorry. So now, my next best advice for you is visit the tower you're thinking about buying. And this is an important thing to do because if you get a chance to see it, you can talk to the person that owns it. A lot of times, you can look at towers and spec sheets and stuff like that, but find somebody who actually owns a tower and, pick their brain and see if they like it. I met up with a guy named Jim, W9OS, who now has since sold his tower to someone else, and he loved the tower I picked out. And the only reason he took his down is because he moved down to or up to, I think, Wisconsin from Illinois, and he didn't need the tower anymore. And the new owner, who I know also, Mike, ND9G, really enjoys it. So anyways, just make sure you visit the tower. I think that's a wise thing to do. And the other thing is, read reviews on EHAM and QRZ. See what people like. A lot of times, there's bogus reviews. You kind of got to connect your data points. Make sure that when you're reading something that really is true, sometimes there's crap in there by the competition that people put in there just to kind of make you doubt your decision and stuff like that. So what you're really looking for is a trend. When everybody says that it's great, it's great. But if everybody starts saying that the rivets on this tower fall off after a few years, you probably don't want to buy that one. And just a side story, my good friend Gary, he bought a nailer for hardwood floors from a Chinese company, and right after he got it, he was, they sent him like $10, and they said, "Hey, write a review." Well, if somebody's going to pay you $10, you're probably going to write a good review. So just kind of look at the reviews with kind of a jaundiced eye, I guess. That's what I'm saying. So now I tried to do this when I did this with the live presentation. I was doing something called, so which tower did I buy? Okay, I did Tower Hunters. You remember from Home and Garden TV? Oh my God, my wife watched that show ad nauseum. But anyways, so I try to make it sound like, there's all these different choices. Did I go with, galvanized? Did I go with, steel? Did I go with aluminum? Blah, blah, blah. Anyway, so I decided to, I played the song here too. Let's see, I gotta get this. Okay. Now, I decided to go with the Universal Aluminum Tower. And because, I could have bought like a Roan, a Trilon, Texas Tower. There's a lot of different towers. And so the reason I bought the aluminum tower is, well, first off, it met my criteria. It took care of all the things that I was really looking for. And I know there's people out there that'll say, "Oh, aluminum. Oh, that's crap. Aluminum. It's like pop cans." Well, let's think about that a little bit more. If you've ever been on an airplane, yeah, guess what? Things that keep, lots, thousands of pounds up in the air, along with the, jet engine that's thrusted through the sky. Yeah, those are made of aluminum too. But there's different grades of aluminum. So this aluminum is a really good stuff. So I had to decide, which model am I going to select? Because there's quite a few on their website. So I found that they have a heavy-duty model, and that's the one that I started looking at. And then I was kind of like, well, when I went and took a look at that tower at Jim W9OS's site at his house, he did something kind of clever, which I thought was neat. He actually had two 30-inch base sections before he started graduating smaller toward the top. And I thought, that's interesting. Maybe I could do that 30-inch base section all the way up, since I was looking for something to love and hug, as I said, all the way up at the top. And sure enough, I talked to Bill at Universal Tower, and he said, yeah, we could do that. It's going to cost you more. And I said, that's fine. I don't care. And then he said, we'll have to make custom sections at the top. And so they were flat tops, because usually the tower would be kind of like a pointy top. And I wanted to have it 30-inch, so he had to make a custom plate for me at the top. And so he decided, or he asked me if it would be okay to go from a 30-inch to a 26 taper at the top with a plate. And I said, that's fine. Just he was trying to look at, reduce the size and weight a little bit. And so that allowed him to go from a 1/2-inch aluminum plate to a 3/8 aluminum plate. So then the next thing was to get a thrust bearing. And so who knows what a thrust bearing is? Yeah. Basically, a thrust bearing, just in a summary, in case you don't know, it will hold the weight of the antenna array with a ball bearing, and it's got little screws that kind of bite into the mast. And so that way the weight of the array is not dropping straight down into the rotor chuck, and instead it's being held up there. And so really the rotor isn't bearing the weight of the array, it's just turning the antennas, which is really what it's for. So I was at one of our local ham fests and found a really neat aluminum thrust bearing. And that's kind of important, since you have an aluminum tower. You got to make sure you either use aluminum or stainless steel, because of the possibility of getting a galvanic reaction. Because if I put steel against aluminum, then it would start to corrode, and that's not good. So I found an aluminum thrust bearing at Radio Expo at the Boone County Fairgrounds. Picked it up. It was great. And then, let's see, catch up my PowerPoint here. I'm working on, let's see what else we got coming up. So what I did is I ordered a third plate, and I'll show this in the pictures. And that little bugger has really come in handy. And that was a suggestion from Ken, KB9I, so that when you take your rotor out, the bottom pipe won't be flailing around because it'll be tied only at the top and in the rotor. And if it's got another little way to kind of support it, then you can have a successful removal of the rotor. And I tell you what, having a flat top at your tower has been great because it allows me to have a place to put your tools. It's weird, but most of the time when you're up there, you're always got a wrench and some nuts and bolts and things you're working on, and it's like having a little desktop to work off of. So it's kind of cool having a flat top on your tower instead of a pointed top on your tower. So then the next thing I decide is, well, since this isn't going to be a nested tower, I had to figure out, well, how I'm going to get this thing home. And I didn't want to have it shipped because I had heard a lot of stories about towers. This isn't anything disparaging against trucking companies because I know they always take good care of everything they ship. But anyways, that's tongue-in-cheek. And I was afraid that it would come damaged and I'd have to go through all the insurance crap and stuff like that. So I decided to actually avoid the shipping cost and actually go out there and go there and get it. And besides, since this isn't a nested tower, it meant that it would have a potential for a lot more shipping costs because they can't be nested. So anyways, and what was kind of neat is when I went there, Bill from Universal actually did all the final welds and asked me how I wanted it. It was all custom. It was just beautiful. I mean, there was no cookie cutter about this thing. And the other thing, it's an American product built by Americans. I watched them weld it and put it together. The top part, the other sections were ready to go when I got there, but it was pretty cool. And I ended up getting an aluminum mast. Got that from Speedy Metals out of Milwaukee. They actually have a city desk where they'll sell to people and not have to buy 100 of them. You could buy one or two. So I picked up two 12-foot aluminum masts. They had a 3/8 inch wall and a 1/4 inch. And I thought the 3/8 was a little bit overkill, but the 1/4 was good. So I ended up a 1/4 inch wall, 2-inch diameter mast, and I still have a spare. I don't know what I'm going to use it for, but I bought two of them. I figured since I was going all the way up there, I'll get two of them. So here's kind of the way the tower option looks like. And let's see. And normally this is the way it would look. It'd be a graduated tower with the sections getting smaller at the top. And mine's different than this, though. So mine was a 30 taper, like this right here, and all the way up. So instead of tapering into a 26 and whatever, so the 26 is where I actually had the plate welded at the top, and all these other sections weren't there. So if you go up to 50 feet and you're sitting at an 18-inch wide, that just didn't kind of make me feel real well, warm and fuzzy. Now, if you look at this picture, they look like they're diagonal pieces, right? How you stand on that. You're actually standing on this flat rung. So that's what made it so much more comfortable. And you got to wear boots, with a nice heel on them so you can, not have it digging. Don't go up there with like tennis shoes. Your feet will kill you, I guarantee you, after about 5 minutes. Okay, so how about some pictures? Let me just kind of whip through some of these and kind of show you how it came together. This is what it looked like as I was heading down the road with my car pickup with all the 5 sections tied together. And yeah, believe me, I got some funny looks. But it was fun. I got a chance to send these send these pictures to them after I was back home, just so they can kind of see how it looked. And let's see. So now I'm putting the tower up. So I had to dig a hole, and I know this is insane. How do you eat an elephant? Well, you eat it one bite at a time, right? So, early in the morning, I said, you know what? I'll just start digging. Okay, this is not going to be that bad, right? Okay. Yeah, it can't be that bad. So I started at like 7 in the morning, ended up at 10 o'clock at night. And I was, literally in the hole with the 5-foot ladder, pulling up heavy clay. That's all we have in Illinois. We don't have sand like some other states, but we have clay. And so I finally got all this dug out. Oh my God. That's why the hole looks so perfect, because it was dug by hand. 6 feet by 5 feet by 5 feet. So once I got it in the hole, I kind of made a superstructure. And and I used some 2x4s and some plumber strap just to kind of hold everything in place. Because my fear is I thought, well, this thing's going to shift around when I put the cement in, so I really wanted not to go anywhere. So just to validate that, I got some levels and put it on each one of the sides, and that's the hole. And then if you look way down the bottom of the hole here, um, it was kind of hard to level the tower against compacted clay. So I thought, well, I'll put some landscaping blocks. And so then I used a shim down there just to kind of get it really nice and accurate. So I was kind of shimming against a hard surface. So I dug like little holes for these landscaping bricks to sit against, and that made it good. And then I tied it in with some plumber strap, 4x4s and 2x4s. So this wasn't going anywhere, and it was definitely nice and sturdy. A couple more shots here. And so that's a 5-foot ladder to give you an idea. We've got one more foot before the top of the hole. And yeah, so I dug that sucker by hand. And so that's kind of the way it looked right there. And kind of go through these kind of quick. And so I took some measurements as I was digging. And I'll tell you a little story behind this. I always like saving the best part for last year. So when you see these tape measure things, there is a story here. There we go. There's some more pictures inside the hole. Digging. You can see where I was digging with my shovel. Okay, so when I got this thing all done, I thought, well, you know what? I was going to try to save the yard. Because I thought, well, I really don't want to have this big old cement truck driving all the way in the back. So I went to a rental store and rented a concrete trough so that the concrete could go sliding down the trough. Well, anyways, when this guy gets here, he says, you ordered a concrete tower mix, right? I said, yeah. He said, well, that's got a lot of aggregate, and that ain't going to slide through that trough that you rented. We're going to have to back you up right to the hole. And I was like, ah, darn. Because I think it was like 90 or 100 bucks I spent on that. So here we are. We're getting the big tire tracks in the backyard, and he's backing up, going right into the hole. And I'm watching, oh, fine, this will just pour in there just like soup, or mucky mud or something like that. Oh, my God, it couldn't have been further from the case. This was the most thick aggregate. And look at it. See, it's in the hole down the bottom like here, but it's still piling up here. I'm like, oh, my God, this isn't oozing into all the nooks and cracks. And he says, yeah, you got to get a shovel. You got to push that stuff down. You got to compact it. And by God, I did. So I had a 2x4, a shovel, and I'm packing this stuff like a wild man. And finally, I get to the end here. You can see that's a motion shot. Who's taking all these pictures? Well, my lovely wife, Amy. She, God bless her soul. She's put up with this entire project through the course of it. And anyways, it's now finally done. And as you can see it's in here. It's got a big void over here, and it's all piled up here. So I had to kind of keep pushing and working the stuff in. Well, anyways, that finally came to an end. And then, stupid me, at a point I was thinking, oh, I'm tired. I'll just get all this stuff up later. And then I thought, oh, my God, this is concrete. I'll have these blocks, everything stuck in here forever. So thank God I did this. So I undid the plumber's strap, smoothed out all the concrete, and but I left the form up, and I think I took that down the next day. Yeah, I did. Okay. So as you can see, it's up here, but all the 4x4s are gone. It's just the 2x4s with the conduits kind of holding the pipe, kept it all in place, and turned out really good. And now this is the front of the house, and this is a pile of all the 6 yards of clay, and then he of course dumped some concrete here from his cement truck. And I put down Visqueen. This really worked out great. I got this as a tip from somebody because all this would really have trashed my front yard. So literally, I ordered up a let's see, a Bobcat with treads instead of tires. So they were able to kind of just scrape the stuff up and not wreck the yard. And then I just lifted the plastic, and you couldn't even tell after it was done that all this dirt was there. So that worked out really well. And that plastic stuff, Visqueen. Fancy word for plastic. And another shot of it. I just kept taking pictures because it was so much damn work. Okay, so now we got the tower in place. And the manual says that you could just walk these towers up. Well, my tower is a little bit more than just a garden variety, graduated smaller to the top tower. It was a lot more heavy. Now, each one of these 10-foot sections weighs about 60 or 70 pounds. So, we had some weight here to work with. And so I knew I was going to have to get some help getting this thing up. So originally I was going to just kind of take this tower and crank or tip it up and then lock it into place, right? Sounds like, just real straightforward, real easy, right? And that's what we're going to do. And I'll show you a few more pictures. Here, it's all put together. Oh, and by the way, Ken, KB99, came over to help me put this together. This is not a tower you could assemble in the sky with a gin pole. These sections really went together tightly, and I'm happy about that because they're not going to wiggle. But they had to be kind of tapped in place with a little help with a mallet and hammering with a 2x4 so that wouldn't bend the metal. But anyways, got it all together. This is that third plate I was talking about. So like when the tower pole is up in the sky, if I wanted to remove the rotor, this is the thrust bearing right here. Then it would hold the mast in place, and the mast wouldn't swing side to side because this third plate was in place there. And by the way, I have since replaced this rotor, not because it was broke, but because I wanted a different rotor. I wanted one that had a remote control so I could work this tower remotely. So I picked up an Alpha Spid with a green heron, and that was a recent acquisition at Hamvention, and love the rotor. It's great. This is a good rotor. It's a Ham 3, I think, something like that. And I got that actually used, and I'll tell you more about that in a second here. So another shot of the tower. I got a nice little pulley here. This is a nice little thing to add so you can kind of pull things up to the top. Got that idea from someone else, so I made sure I put a pulley up there. This is a UVS 300 antenna that I was going to put up, but I found out that it wouldn't fit. The U-bolt was for like 1 3/4 inches, and this is a 2-inch pipe, so I had to fabricate a little aluminum pole here, bracket to make the UVS 300 VHF UHF Omni at the top fit. Okay, so now everything's ready. I hired a crane guy to come over because I thought, well, I'll get a crane guy. He'll just lift it up, and we'll be done. Call it a day. Well, the super smart crane guy said, no, you know what? I don't really want to just grab this and bring it up with the crane. And his fear was that the two mounts down at the bottom would probably snap and it would twist with the torquing of lifting it. And if those snapped and broke the base mounts, then, we're done. No more tower going up. And so what he recommended is that we unbolt the two legs that I had that I was going to hinge up. And instead, he was going to lift the whole thing and lower it in place. And man, was he right. Because as soon as he started lifting this thing up, the tower did this like violent little shift. And that would have for sure ripped and snapped off the bolt mounts on the concrete. So thank you, very smart tower guy. So now it's time to hook up the tower. And here's his strap he's got. And we're about ready to lift it. Okay, it's lifted, and now we're lowering it in place. And there's Ken, KB99, that's me. And we're putting it in place. I'm so grateful my wife took all these pictures because, believe me, I had my hands full with everything else we were doing that day. And so we're getting it done. We're finally tightening up all the nuts and bolts and screws here. And those are the ground rods on the bottom there. Those are installed later. And so we got it in place. And so now all of a sudden, after it's all in place, the guy says, well, you know what, my strap is still at the top. Who's going to unhook the strap? I wasn't thinking about that at all. That little thing right down at the bottom there. And so fortunately, Ken, who was a tower climber, had brought his climbing harness in. Because at the time, I didn't own a climbing harness. So here he is, Ken's suiting up. And he's climbing up there to be able to unhook the strap that lowered the tower in place. And so, anyways, the tower operator, he charges a 4-hour minimum. This took about 45 minutes. So we had all sorts of time. So Ken said, hey, let's use the tower guy to put the beam, the Mosley TA53 up in place. And oh my God, that was so easy. What a great idea. Because otherwise, yours truly would have had to figure out how to get that up there. And so here's Ken. He's climbing up to the top of the tower, disconnecting that. And he's sitting there. Oh, there he's showing off with his hands in the air there. Look, Mom, no hands. And so he's sitting there waiting for the beam to come so we can, he's taking a picture too. And here's the beam. It's going up on the tower. and being lowered and connected in place. And that worked out so slick. That was great. So there's the UVS 300 omnidirectional antenna up at the top, and the Mosley TA53, which is the most of the tower. And so Ken's kind of rustling with. There we go. Now it's up in the air. And so a little bit of hillbilly. You can keep your trailer or camper in the driveway, which is kind of nice. Once again, if you want to have all this fun, make sure you're in unincorporated. It helps out a lot. Let's see. Okay, so then for the ingress into the house, I wanted to get a lightning box. I got this from KF7P. I was probably one of his first customers back in 2011. He's got his whole website now. I discovered him. He was just starting out, and now he's got all sorts of climbing parts for towers and whatnot. But anyway, so I had to get a hole in the house. So there's a guy who runs a business not too far from my house in Ingleside, and he does coring. And so I stopped over there. I said, "Hey, can you do a core?" And he says, "Yeah, I suppose." And so I think I gave him $50, and he came over in his lunch hour and made a nice hole through the concrete, so it wouldn't look like hell. I mean, I could probably chisel this out, but try to make it look nice, keep the wife happy. Now this is the antenna I first put up. This is a Scorpion 88 by Cubics. I really wanted to like this antenna. I'll be honest with you, but I had issues with it having a really high SWR across all the 2 meters. And I tried and I tried and I tried, so I eventually replaced this. But here's in the garage, and I'm all excited putting it up there. Oh no, here's some more of those tape measurements. Okay, we'll talk about that in a bit. And here we go, some more tape measures. Okay, let's see. Keep rolling along here. There's another shot of the tower. There's the width of it, 5 feet by 5 feet by 6 feet deep. Okay, so now everything's up there except that Scorpion 88. So Ken helped me when he could, but then the Saturday that I was going to have him help me put up the Scorpion 88 just to finish off the tower, he had a family commitment. He called and said he couldn't make it. So resourceful Eric, KC9CUK, came over with his climbing harness. And I thought, oh, Eric's going to climb up there. How nice of him to do that for me. Little did he know he was putting the harness on me. And I'd never climbed a tower before. And when I had a tower before, I had someone else climb when I was a kid. So I'm like, okay, this is my tower. I got to, baptism by fire. And so Eric's putting the harness on me, and I later ended up buying this from him because it was so nice. It's one of those I forget the name. But anyway, so I will tell you one thing about climbing a tower. It's kind of like public speaking. It will scare the crap out of you before you go up. But once you're up there, it's not so bad. So, just make sure you got the right gear. Take precautions. This isn't a race. Just, make sure you're hooked up every rung as you go up. Don't free climb. Oh, my God. I can't tell you how many stories I've heard about hams climbing all the way to the top and then they hook up. No, you hook up as you go up. And that way, in case, disaster strikes, you lose your footing, you're not going to fall down on the ground. Okay, so there's me. Now I'm smiling. And they're getting me all suited up. And there's Brian, W9MCW, wishing me good luck. Thank you, Brian. I didn't know what I was getting into. But and this is Dave Zarotny. I forget his call now. Great guy. He's the only guy. He's actually a safety officer at a hospital, local hospital. He's the only guy that came here with a hard hat. So he knows what he's doing. And so he was giving me some more last rites. Help here. And so here I'm about ready to ascend. Now I'm up at the top. So this isn't so bad. But I did bring my little camera. This is 2011. I didn't have a smartphone with a camera on it, and so this is with a little Sony, a Canon, little shot camera I had with me, and so this is how I was looking from up there, and it was pretty neat. And it was fall, November. Trees were good color and stuff. So I'm looking out over at the landscape. Oh, that's right. I got to put that antenna up. So the Scorpion 88's down on the ground, and that was something we did that day. So that's what it looked like from the top. There's Dave, Brian, there's Bob, KC9JBA. That was Eric. Sorry, Bob's over here. So anyways, and some animals, spurious animals that I have around my house. Dogs, lots of dogs. Anyway, so another shot from the ground. Let's see. Okay, so this is Ken. He came back out the next day because he felt bad. He couldn't help out, and he helped me put up a dipole or two, and so we kind of kept working on it. This is Ken going to town, working on the tower. And this right here is a weather station or it's a solar panel for the weather station. I have Davis Vantage Pro, and I've got the anemometer, which is the wind gauge at the top, and the rest of it's down at the ground where you can get at it, like the rain collector. So I have two receivers, so that makes it kind of nice for accuracy and serviceability. There we go. So that's more tower shots. That's Ken. This is me with my telephoto lens. So there's the UVS, yeah, the UVS 300s at the top, and this is the Scorpion 88. You know, like I said, I wanted to like it, but I still switched out with another antenna, so all is good. I actually sold that antenna. And also as a side light, this is a Carolina Wyndham. This I had a terrible time with, and the reason is it wasn't in free space. It was only maybe 2.5, 3 feet away from the tower, way too close, because this is actually a radiator. So this should have been out in free space. I should have put a runner line. I found out later, and that would have worked so much better. So if you have a Carolina Wyndham, make sure that it's way out in the middle of free space, and not close to the aluminum tower where it could couple and not work so well. Okay, let's see where we're at here. More of these pictures. I'll kind of click through these real quick. This little coil at the top is a balun. This is how Bosley recommends that you create a balun with a coil. Ken showing off again. And let's see, we're at the top, looking up at Ken. Okay, so this is now with the ground strap. I know I need to fix this. I still haven't fixed this. These have to be with that little shotgun thing that goes poof and welds it. I got a cat weld. That's it. I got to do a cat weld on these. I haven't done that yet, and probably got to do something better here. But you know what? The way I look at it, this tower is probably better grounded than probably like 90% of the towers out there. So that's my justification. And what I was going to tell you, then I thought, great idea. Let's organize all the pipes, all the cables inside a nice Schedule 40 pipe, right? Okay. Well, not such a good idea. So I would not recommend this. What would happen is rodents, they love living in this thing. So I had mice that were living in here and they were chewing on my cable. So I had to replace a couple coaxes. So now these coaxes are just in bridle rings out in the open, and the mice have nowhere to live. So X-nay on the Schedule 40 pipe. And so this is the box going into the house. Let's see, this is how it looks with the lightning arresters. These are polyphasers. And then the hole going to the house, lightning rod, ground. I hadn't hooked that up yet in this picture. There we go, now it's hooked up. And I've got the lightning ground here. And then the ground goes to a bus bar on my ham desk where everything is grounded. And let's have a few dogs here. That's Libby actually, and that's Cutie. Buzz through these. There's Carolina Wyndham again. Okay, now I added a few more. After I found out that the Carolina Wyndham wasn't working, I went with dedicated dipoles, 40, 80, and 120. And I've got an SSB coax switch, which I don't know if it's in this picture or not. There it is right there. And so I have that one line that I use for the Carolina Wyndham feeding into this. And then the coaxes for each individual dipole are switched from this little coax box. And what's nice about this SSB is it doesn't need a control line. It actually runs and sends the voltage through the coax to make the coax switch. Now the downside is that because of that, if you try to run the coax through a polyphaser, guess what? It won't pass the voltage, and so the coax switch won't work. So I had to bypass the polyphaser. I still haven't figured this out yet, but I have to do something for the dipole so that they're grounded, and they're not right now through the polyphasers. And let's see, it's starting to get complicated. You know, I'm adding a lot of crap on the tower, but I'm having fun. Oh, and those little bars that you see, these are custom made at a fabrication place. This is an aluminum bar with stainless steel hardware. And that's the way the shack looks, right like that. And there's me. Now this is a really old picture. If you go to my QRZ page, it looks completely different. There's only one thing that's constant with K9RUF or K9AT is change. And so I keep adding and changing things in the shack. And there's one of my microphones. That's a Lector Voice EV320. I also have a condenser mic, a Sterling ST59, which I like as well. Kind of tossed up between them. Anyways, so there you go. So, what didn't I tell you to do? What didn't I do that I should have done? What didn't I talk about in this whole process? I know you're sitting here thinking, what could it be? What didn't he talk about? Well, how about what about getting the permit? Yeah, how about that permit? So, anyways, here's the permit story, or lack thereof. This is when everything's done. I'm actually out in the front yard raking leaves, and a county inspector guy drives by, and he hits his brakes kind of quickly, and he backs up, pulls into the driveway, and proceeds to get out of his van and looks up and down at the tower and says, "That's new, isn't it?" It's not like I could have just, got in the way of it and said, "No, what are you talking about? I don't see a tower." And I said, "Yeah, it's new." And he said, "Bet you have a lot of concrete back there, don't you? And how much do you have back there?" And I said, 6 yards. And he kind of shrugged his head and said, "I'll tell you what, you need a permit for one of those things," he said, "those radio towers." He says, "I won't red tag you, but what I want you to," no, he couldn't red tag you because it was already done, actually, but he could make me take it down. That's the ugly part. So he says, "I want you to go down to the county with all your documentation, tell them what you did, and I'll let them deal with you." And then he proceeded down the street to a new house that was being built. So, it's just one of those ugly moments. So he told me to go down and get the permit from the county. So I headed down to the county for confession, more or less. And so I basically, I had to get all these different types of. There's the health department, there's the electrical, there's this, and all these things had to be, verified. And a telecommunications study. There's like 4 different, and I'll break that out in the spreadsheet what it all costs. And so I did all this, and I went down and gave all this information, paid the fee, and I waited like 6 long months, and finally the permit came retrospectively for the project, and it was all condoned and everything was fine. And as you saw in those little tape measure move things, I knew what the rules were, and I made sure, just in the lark chance that this might happen, that I would be in compliance. So I made sure it was a certain setback from the side yards, a certain distance from the well, a certain distance from the house, all the rules that I knew had to be followed. So all that was done right. And then they knew that once they finally did the inspections. So you're sitting here thinking, why didn't I get the permit? Which is something I need to tell you. So you don't repeat this. This is a teaching moment, as they say. Okay, so Dave, why didn't I get the permit? Okay, let's catch up here. Well, I was trying to save money on the tax bill. Let's be honest, okay? So the more things you do to your house, the more that your house is worth, even though this really isn't an improvement by some people's estimation. But, of course, didn't want the house to be worth more because I'd get taxed more, right? The other hams that I had talked to said, well, you're not in a city, you're rural, you're unincorporated, it won't matter. I know a lot of other guys that did it, and they never had to get a permit. So, well, that's still bad advice. And so, really, and I'm doing a little promo here for permits. Permits are there for your benefit. Because let's say I built this thing crappy. I maybe didn't use the right amount of concrete. Maybe I built it too close to the well or the sewer system or the septic field and all this kind of things. Permits are there to protect you and the homeowner that buys your house, so that there won't be any negative impacts on your house. So I guess all I can say is this is the most important thing that I can share with you from this presentation today is, here it comes, get the permit. And why do you want to do that? Well, because you're going to sleep better, because it's going to be condoned, and everything will work out okay. So that was good. Now, I know you're probably thinking, how much does this sucker cost? Oh, let me go back here. I didn't cover that one very well. Okay. So the tower itself, since this is going to be a higher cost than if you get a price, and this is by the way in 2011 dollars. I haven't priced these things in 9 years, so the price of aluminum may have gone up or down, or everything goes up, right? So this is what it costs just for the tower. Now the thrust bearing, which is that top piece, 175. Here's the building permit breakdown. Health department, tower, watershed, zoning, telecommunications, all that amounted to $227. Concrete, which is actually a little cheaper than I thought. For 6 yards of concrete was 643 bucks. Concrete trough that I didn't need because it wouldn't flow through there anyway was 95. Guy to come over and haul it away cost 200 bucks. Crane rental was 420. And the beam, now this is the kind of cool part. I'd kind of blow my wad on the tower, and I thought, because I really had my heart set on getting a stepper. Everybody said the steppers are the best towers, antennas. And I know I might upset some people when I say this, but I ended up getting the beam and the rotor used from another guy who was selling his tower, and I have another hand that I shared it with, and he bought the tower. So at this point, I said, you know what? I spent a lot of money on the tower. That I can't change. I can always get another antenna some other day. And so I got the beam and the rotor used. And so the Mosley TA53 is the beam that I got. And I tell you what, I love this thing. It's compact. It gets great reports. And from what I've heard from a lot of people, when it comes to Mosleys, the only time you take them down is when you retire. And I've known guys with steppers that, they're up there taking the thing down to work on the spreader so they don't, because I guess their fiberglass, the beryllium strip goes in and out of that can crack, and the stepper motors sometimes can freeze in cold climates, and we live in a cold climate, and just a bunch of stuff I didn't want to have to deal with. So I was really happy I got this, and no harm that I didn't get the stepper. And I could maybe something. I'm looking at the JK antenna. That's kind of a cool antenna. That doesn't have any traps. Oh, and by the way, as far as traps, they say all the traps are lossy. Yeah, I know you lose a little bit of power, but if you're running an amplifier, who cares? Anyways, okay, a few more things here. We got the rotor refurbing. That was 170 bucks because it was a used rotor. And all the dipoles, 450 bucks. Copper wire, 150 for the dipoles. Coax switches, remote coax switch for the dipoles. I've since, added other antennas here. So this is just kind of miscellaneous stuff. LMR, I used all LMR 400. I know some guys will say, well, you don't have to do that. You could use Turf 13 because it's only HF. But you know what? I wanted each one of those coax runs to be able to run the maximum frequency possible, no matter what I did with it. So spending a little bit more on the coax didn't really bother me. Schedule 40 hardware. Yeah, I didn't need that because the rodents chewed my coax. Anyways, coring, 50 bucks. Lightning arrestor box. And I bought the climbing harness from Eric. 250 bucks for that. So anyways, out the door, 8,805 bucks. That's a pretty good number. So you got to decide, is that too much money for you? Would you spend that much? I don't know. I guess it all depends, where you're coming from. And for me, I was at a good place in my life. I could do that. And it was, remember, a bucket list item. Okay, so in conclusion, what are you supposed to do? Get that damn permit. That's the most important thing I want you to remember. Okay, the other thing, spend your time researching planning. You want to make sure that you figure out what you really want as far as the tower goes. Learn from hams, talk to them. Read QRZ, do your research. There's a lot of options here with towers. And the other thing too, enjoy the moment. I know this sounds stupid, but I harken back to the days when I was a kid and I had a model train set, and I always kind of thought, well, yeah, I got to finish this thing up, And one day I finally did. I had put down the tracks and the fake ballast, and everything was working great. The little hills and the mountains and all that stuff. And then I was just driving the train around the tracks, and I was thinking, okay, well, now what do I do? It's done. So that kind of taught me a lesson, a life lesson, not only in train tracks and ham radio, but just enjoy the moment. And for me, the moment was researching it and putting it all together, and it was a nice little project. I know some people want to finish things up, but for me, it was kind of nice working on it, and I enjoyed working on it. So why did I buy the tower now? Well, I told you my mom was had passed away with cancer, and I just wasn't sure. She did everything she wanted to do in her life, and I thought, well, this is one thing I just wanted to do, and it's one of those things that it's done now, and I'm happy. I've had it for 8 years, and I'll probably have it till they haul me out of here or I move into an old folks home. Who knows? And so, I want to give a special thanks to all the people that helped with the tower. Ken was a big help. Ken, KB9I, and there's a treasure trove of information you can get just by talking to people and finding out everything that you like in a tower and in everything you want to do and picking people's brains and doing everything that you want to do. And so, as I wrap this up, there's an old adage that comes to mind. It's like, if you've been told something that you can't use, you haven't been educated, you've been entertained. So anyways, tonight I hope I broke that rule and that I've educated you and entertained you. I kept it under an hour too. And this is my latest YouTube video. It was long. I hope you enjoyed it, and keep subscribing. I'll keep coming up with more content. And I know these are long, but I think they're good. And maybe I'll run into many of you at Hamvention. I go there every year. So look for K9AT, the new extra on the block. 7-3. Bye-bye.